It's time for another Mrs. Chef and Teddy story time. Yeah! So Teddy's acting super cozy, so I'm going to record a couple books today. So if I look the same, it's because I'm recording a couple, because it's easier, because he's laying so nicely. He usually does, but then I don't have to go off and find him wherever he is in the house. So I'm going to be reading a part of Chapter 1 of the Graveyard book by Neil Gaiman. And this is a book that's a play on the Jungle Book. And if you know anything about the Jungle Book, a boy is left. And in this book, you'll notice in the first chapter, someone does something terrible to his family. So the boy has to leave, but it's actually pretty interesting, and the book is very good. So, Chapter 1, How Nobody Came to the Graveyard. There was a hand in the darkness, and it held a knife. The knife had a handle of polished black bone, and a blade finer and sharper than any razor. If it sliced you, you might not even know you had been cut, not immediately. The knife had done almost everything it was brought to that house to do, and both the blade and the handle were wet. The street door was still open, just a little bit, where the knife and the man who held it had slipped in, and wisps of night air mist slithered and twined into the house through the open door. The man, Jack, paused on the landing. With his left hand he pulled a large white handkerchief from the pocket of his black coat, and with it he wiped off the knife and his gloved right hand, which had been holding it. Then he put the handkerchief away. The hunt was almost over. He had left the woman in her bed, the man on the bedroom floor, the older child in her brightly colored bedroom surrounded by toys and half-finished models. That only left the little one, a baby, barely a toddler, to take care of. One more, and his task would be done. He flexed his fingers. The man Jack was, above all other things, a professional, or so he told himself, and he would not allow himself to smile until the job was complete. His hair was dark and his eyes were dark, and he wore black leather gloves of the finest lambskin. The toddler's room was at the very top of the house. The man Jack walked up the stairs, his feet silent on the carpet. Then he pushed open the attic door, and he walked in. His shoes were black leather, and they were polished to such a shine that they looked like dark mirrors. You could see the moon reflect in them, tiny and half full. The real moon shone through the casement window. Its light was not bright, and it was diffused by the mist, but the man Jack would not need much light. The moonlight was enough. It would do. He could make out a shape of a child in the crib, head and limbs and torso. The crib was high, slatted side to prevent the child from getting out. Jack leaned over, raised his right hand, the one holding the knife, and aimed for the chest. And then he lowered his hand. The shape in the crib was a teddy bear. There was no child. The man Jack's eyes were accustomed to the dim moonlight, so he had no desire to turn on the electric light. And light was not that important after all. He had other skills. The man Jack sniffed the air. He ignored scents that had come into the room with him, dismissed the scents that he could safely ignore, honed in on the smell of the thing that he had come in to find. He could smell the child, a milky smell, like chocolate chip cookies, and the sour tang of wet disposable nighttime diaper. He could smell the baby shampoo in its hair and something small and rubbery, a toy. He thought, and then, no, something to suck. That the child had been carrying. The child had been here. It was here no longer. The man Jack followed his nose down the stairs, through the middle of the tall, thin house. He inspected the bathroom, the kitchen, the airing cupboard, and finally the downstairs hall, in which there was nothing to be seen but the family's bicycles, a pile of empty shopping bags, a fallen diaper, and the stray tendrils of fog that had insinuated themselves into the hall from the open door to the street. The man Jack made a small noise then, a grunt that contained in it both frustration and satisfaction. He slipped the knife into his sheath in the inside pocket of his long coat and stepped out into the street. There was moonlight, and there were street lights, but the fog stifled everything, muted light and muffled sound, and made the night shadowy and treacherous. He looked down the hill towards the light of the closed shops, then up the street where the last houses wound up the hill on their way to the darkness of the old graveyard. The man Jack sniffed the air. Then, without hurrying, he began to walk up the hill. That's all I'm going to read you from that first chapter, but if you liked that and want to know what happens, you can always download that book from Overdrive. It's available right now. Bye.